Today I want to talk to you about vulnerability. In the last video, I think I talked about how when I was younger, I used to have like an invisibility cloak to keep me strong when I was around people, because I was frightened of vulnerability. But in this video, I'm going to talk to you about why I think it is that vulnerability is a strength that we actually need. I think it's a strength for a whole number of reasons. Firstly, though, it's personally. I think there is nothing better than vulnerability, because when you let yourself be seen as more vulnerable, what it actually, in fact, does is it makes you more relatable. More relatable than you would have been when you were keeping a shield up. Because, like I said, when I kept the shield up, it made me feel stronger, but it also made me feel somebody that I wasn't. And by letting that vulnerability out, what it actually does, I think, is it makes you more authentic, more like your natural self. And as I'm talking to you, that's what I want it to feel like. Vulnerability brings with it a whole new layer of trust, because when you're willing to share that with people, you can share your fears, those things that you always thought were weaknesses. You can share them and become more relatable with other people, because guess what? People have those same fears that you do. And when you start to share that with somebody, it like builds a bond with that person that you wouldn't have had if you came across as, I'm strong, I can cope with anything. And that will make you so much more relatable. I also think it opens up a world of communication whereby we can speak openly and honestly to each other, which is something that I think many of us don't really do. And when you do that, it opens a whole new world. You'll explore territories in your conversation that there's a great possibility you will never have done before, and it will open up a bond to friendship that perhaps may never have happened otherwise. And of course, when you do that, that gives the other person the opportunity to do the same thing. It gives them the chance to open up to you, and it creates a bond that you may never have had otherwise. Not only that, but when you do, it kind of opens a channel for better conversation and better communication that you would have in other respects. Let's look at your mental health. When you are more vulnerable and you open yourself up to other people, it sort of lifts a weight and eases the pain that you can be going through mentally. And you know what? Yes, I know that people can say you open yourself up to ridicule. However, I've found exactly the opposite. I used to get more ridicule when I was trying to be the big, strong, brave person that I actually wasn't. And so once you do that and you open yourself up, you release that pressure that's on your mind. And that can make a whole heap of difference, you know. And I'll tell you what else it does. It strengthens you. Once you've lowered that vulnerability, it strengthens something inside of you. It makes you feel better. Probably because once you've admitted you're vulnerable, you can only move forward, can't you? And that's a really important thing to think about in our lives. What else it does is it normalizes the problem. Because when you keep it to yourself, and when you're not vulnerable, and you live through all the struggles, it works against you. And there's no doubt about that. And it can often lead you into a position where you're depressed. And that is an awful place to be. And one of the other things, of course, is that once you've let everybody know, once you've become vulnerable, it helps that healing process inside yourself and makes you go on that road towards feeling better about yourself. And that has to be a good thing, don't you think? And once you've done that, the other thing, of course, is that it allows you then to start treating yourself with kindness, because you can then think to yourself, I've opened up, I've let people know. That's a big step. And I think it's going to make me feel better. Just imagine that you're in a role of leadership, and when you talk to the people under your leadership, when you're strong all the time, when people see no chink in your armour, it's hard to develop a loyalty to that person because you can't reach up to them, you can't reach their level. And so it makes you feel worse. But when you've got a leader who admits he's vulnerable, admits he makes mistakes, and is willing to share that fact, it draws in a closeness with his group, I suppose, that you would not have had. And what it does, it invites people to collaborate more. It invites people to say, do you know what? I think I've got something of value to add to this. Because they know that if the leader is willing to be vulnerable and is willing to admit mistakes, you don't always have to be right when you put your thoughts forward, because it allows you room to not feel stupid, if you like. It fosters a good feeling amongst the people. And of course, if you're a leader who admits that you're vulnerable and you're inviting comments and collaboration from your subordinates, that also helps them too, because they realise that they're not just working for you, they're part of where you're going as well. One thing I've found, besides the fact it's really windy out, is that when you're admitting that you're vulnerable, it helps you to grow personally. It helps you to move forward, because you're no longer hiding. You've opened yourself up and you're on that step forward that you may not have been otherwise. And let's be fair, there can be nothing better than learning from your own mistakes. And I know this personally because I have made loads. I'm pretty sure you have as well. And it's something that can help all of us. And what that does is it allows us all to adapt, to grow, and to become better people. And if you do that by admitting it yourself and you allow other people to do that, surely that has to be a step forward. And finally, of course, vulnerability really helps if you're in a creative field, because it helps you to open up and express yourself in a much better way. I can't imagine doing this channel and talking to you on these videos without being vulnerable. I think it lets you get to know me better, And I think that's really important, because you and I, we have a relationship, you know. When you can express yourself fully, because you're not hiding behind a wall or behind an inside a cloak, it makes life so much easier. If you're an artist, it allows you to paint or to sculpt in a different way to you would if you were playing it safe. For myself doing this, it's much better that I open myself up, especially since the whole aim of this channel is to give advice, to give encouragement, and to share a little bit of wisdom that I've learned along the way. One of the biggest things I've learned is to allow myself to be vulnerable. I never used to be. And I think I learned this most when I had my problem with my kidney and I felt that I might not be around much longer. Up until then, I would always treat myself as though I was a strong one. But of course, that isn't always the way. And so afterwards I realised that for me to get the most out of my life, I was going to need to open myself up, to admit my fears, to admit my worries, to admit that I'm not perfect and that I may need help along the way. Speaking of which, if you find anything in this video of value, please hit that like button, because what that does is helps this video to get shown to other people who may be struggling with the same thing. And I suppose the biggest thing is that it's allowed me to take risks. Doing this channel was a risk for me because it was something I wasn't expecting I'd ever do. It's a risk that I've really been pleased I did, because it's got me in touch with you, and I've built a community of people who share things that astound me, humble me, and encourage me. And that's brilliant, but none of that would have happened without vulnerability. So keep that in mind as you go forward. And if you look up there, there's a video that's going to point out that even if you don't realise it, you're already a winner in life. I'll see you next time.